Hello, and welcome to American Air and Wargaming. This is a battle report for Modulorka, the Orky skirmish wargame published by Mr. Modulorka. To kick off the game, my opponent and I drew a battlefield, a primary and a secondary mission, and a battlefield condition. We get the walls for our battlefield and get set up for a properly sized game on a 2x2 map. Since we're playing this over a lunch break, we stick to smaller sized forces at 30 points and missions which only take 4 turns. The primary mission is skrap, which means that our models will all be worth victory points for getting knocked out. The secondary one is grab loot, so 5 carryable victory points will get dropped down after setup. The battlefield condition is dead of night, so all of our models start out in the concealed state. This means that if they're in any cover at all, then they can't be shot at. However, attacking or being attacked clears that state. So we set up the walls, but using these corner pieces to approximate the straight walls because we don't actually have any straight walls. Then we alternate filling the board with scatter terrain, though we should have rolled for initiative first before doing that. Oh well. My force for the day was relatively straightforward. To Kapn, who was a rock star with a mecha claw and a pistol. Then I've got one regular lad with a jetpack, bludger, and a pistol. Another regular lad with a bludger and a pistol, but no jetpack. And then 2 other regular lads just with rifles. My opponent was also running a horde list, with 1 jetpacking horde boss and 3 jetpacking lads, though one of them had a bazooka pistol. There's only 3 in this photo because one of them had been set up already. Speaking of setup, next thing up was to get everyone set up. Since I had exactly 5 orcs in my force, each one of them was worth 2 victory points for skrap. However, with only 4 models, my opponent's boss and one of the regular lads were actually worth 3 each. We also set out the grabbable victory points for grab loot. We rolled off and I got the initiative for turn 1. I moved my first lad up and picked up one of the loot points. Then, having no visible targets, he went into Overwatch. My opponent's first jetpacker did mostly the same thing, but without grabbing a victory point. However, I moved up my lad, and his Overwatch shot was a miss. This was also the lad with the bazooka pistol, so he now needed to reload before he could fire again. My lad also missed. Flipping back to the other side of the board, one of the other jetpackers tried to hop over to snag a victory point, but rolled a 1 on his jetpack roll and landed short. He was at least able to take a shot at my lad. However, both my Overwatch and his regular shot missed. There were a lot of missed shots this game. My other rifle lad stepped up and actually did land a hit, catching the bazooka pistolier. Another jetpacker careened across the map and engaged my lad in melee, but failed to hit him. Since I'd already activated, I had to take a pin token. Then my boss stepped up and took a shot, but that also missed. My opponent's final jetpacker tried to double engage my pinned lad, but also fell short with his jetpack. He was at least able to land on the victory point and claim it, and also land a hit on my lad who had moved up first. After waiting very patiently, my jetpacker went over and tried to finish off the wounded one on the right flank. He landed in the right spot, but didn't land the hit. And that was the end of turn 1. My opponent got to start on turn 2. One of the jetpack lads took another shot at my victory point toting lad, but missed. On the other side of the board, my jetpacker landed the melee hit and knocked down the bazooka boy. The other jetpacker on the left side of the board returned the favor though, knocking my lad out, finally, and forcing him to drop the victory point he was carrying. I had my unengaged rifleman take his turn to attack the downed jetpacker, taking him out and scoring me 2 victory points for the kill. Unfortunately for me, the remaining jetpacker was able to do the same for my downed lad. The Kapn moved up and tried to get a crunch off, but whiffed. My final rifle lad couldn't attack as rifles actually have a minimum range of 2 inches, so I had him unpin and then summit the terrain in the center to grab the victory point that was sitting there. And that was the end of turn 2, which meant that it was time to see what the random event was. It's a timeout. Interesting. No models suffer any reduction in HP. Pretty rough for me though, as I was hoping to let the Kapn get a crumpet in. So instead I moved him back and had him pick up the victory point which had been dropped by my now out lad. My opponent had a similar idea. He moved up the lad who had already collected 1 victory point to collect a second. Then he jetpacked back into his own deployment zone, safe from any attacks this round. I double moved up with my jetpacker, but I knew that with my weapons it takes at least 3 actions to knock someone out. 2 attacks to get them down and then 1 to take them out. Not to mention the fact that I wasn't even going to be going first in the final turn, so it seemed kind of like a futile gesture. The jetpack boss took a swing at my rifle lad, but missed. I wanted him to be able to move this turn, so I took the pin. The attack wouldn't actually have been able to do any damage, but my opponent just wanted to get the pin on there. Though we've since learned that, according to the rules, if the initial attack whiffs, neither the pin nor countering happens. Whoops. But it was still a good tactical play given our understanding of the rules. I unpinned and moved the lad anyways just to make a potential play for the VP-laden jetpacker in the next round. And the rest of the turn was just lads charging up towards the backfield for the final turn, which my opponent got to kick off. Now here's where this misunderstanding of the rules had an even bigger impact. My opponent's boss charged into the rifle lad, who was actually going to be able to line up a shot on the jetpacker. The thinking was that even if the boss whiffed, which he did, that it would either pin my rifleman or force him to counterattack, burning his turn. If we played it correctly, the boss missing the attack would have meant that my lad could have just moved up and gotten a shot off. However, since we were playing it incorrectly, I figured that between being pinned and unable to do anything, or swinging with no hope of taking out the enemy down this turn, I'd at least choose the most violent option. So my lad smashed the butt of his rifle into the boss's nose, knocking 1 HP off of him in a show of defiance. The other thing that my opponent was doing with this maneuver was blocking up my other rifleman from getting past and taking his own shot. It was a good tactical move, just based around a misunderstanding of the rules. But hey, at least we were both wrong, and now we're going to play it right from now on. I realized that I was not going to be able to take down the lad with the VP Pinata. There was just no way to get enough attacks on him by the end of the game. So I changed tactics and had my jetpacker take on another one of our enemies who was in a slightly less entrenched position. My lad swung true, landing a hit with 2 damage on his attack, and the counterattack failed. Now, with activations dwindling down, my opponent was able to pull the lad with all the VP out of cover again and take a swat at my rifleman. My lad took 2 damage, but since he has no melee weapon, the counterattack only did 1 damage. If my boss could get up to him and into melee, the Mecha Claw can do 4 damage on a critical hit. However, it was slightly too far away from melee. So the final activation of the game was my boss moving up and taking a pistol shot into the jetpacker, who only had 2 HP left. He went down, but there was no way I was going to get him out, as that takes another action. And that was it for the game. We tallied it up, and since we'd each only taken out 1 enemy with 2 victory points, we were tied on score that way. However, I'd collected 3 of the loose victory points to my opponent's 2, so by the narrowest of margins, I got the win. Rules confusions aside, this was a really fun game because it forced us to really think tactically about which moves would get us to victory, and what outcomes we needed in order to get there. We're somehow still getting a hang of these rules, even with almost a year's worth of games under our belts now. But it's definitely still fun, and really nice to have a tabletop game which we can get around in over a lunch break. Coming from 40k and other larger scale games, it can be a bit daunting to plan for 3 or more hours for just a single game. This has been a really nice game and format to act as a more digestible alternative. But that's it for now, and don't forget, we's the best.